And Ashley, you're ready to go. Go ahead.
Okay, thank you. Let me share my screen. And I've never been called a dynamo before, so thank you for that introduction. Okay, we're going to get started. Just let me get my slides. Okay, so part three is going to be review plus. It's probably the best way for me to put it. So it is going to be a little bit of review. So if you have not attended before, it's okay, because we're going to fill in some gaps and add a little bit more to it, because basically we're going to talk about some of the things we've already covered, but also some things I've learned as recently as last night, as a matter of fact, which I think will be helpful to others. And then, of course, Anne Marie is going to add her wonderful knowledge as well to the session today. So as we're going through the session, we'd like you to focus on the essential question: how can using Actively Learn assist students with learning disabilities, and even differentiating instruction in a face-to-face classroom? Our objectives are, by the end of the session, educators will recognize Actively Learn as a resource to assist students with learning disabilities. Also provide formative assessment to your students in real time, and differentiate instruction for a multi-level class. So we are going to do a brief review of what Actively Learn is. So Actively Learn is a digital reading platform that helps teachers activate, support, and reveal student thinking. It's actually referred to as the ASR framework. It's a platform that supports students and teachers by providing reading for depth. It's a digital tool that provides content across subjects with powerful, engaging instruction. So Actively Learn really activates students' thinking. So class assignments with interactive reading and videos for grades 3 through 12, which is perfect for our adult readers. Catalog with thousands of lessons across subjects and genres that can be searched by grade level, topic, author, and or standards. And we do like to point out we are talking about TEKS and not adult ed. However, I've seen some things that still apply. Actively Learn activates thinking by allowing us to insert questions, notes, and media that can be embedded anywhere into the text to stop the students so they think, reflect, and write. Students are able to annotate along the side of the text as they're reading as well.
Ashley, can we go back to
Yes.
just the TEKS for a minute?
Yes.
Okay, I feel compelled to just remind everyone that the new Texas Adult Education Content Standards that we rolled out last year, we did look at the Texas Essential Knowledge and Skills Standards for K through 12, and although this is not aligned to our Texas AEL content standards, there are many, many, many of the English language arts content standards that will apply when you use Actively Learn. So really think about how you can use your standards-based instruction when you're using Actively Learn, okay? Because although they're not aligned to the TEKS, there are many standards that will align nicely, and I think Kelly would agree with me on that point because she was actually an instructional coach. So, or excuse me, I know you're a career navigator, Kelly, but I know you're familiar with the standards. So just wanted to point that out, everybody. Thanks, Ashley.
Okay, no problem. Let's see, where is I? Okay, so in addition, students can also share their notes and have discussions with their peers, so they're actually able to like each other's posts and that sort of a thing. So it's very gives an opportunity to collaborate and to get together with their peers. So I'm going to stop right here because I know I have a combination of people here. So in the chat pod, if you could share with us, I know a couple of you for sure have used Actively Learn. If you could just kind of share with us how you used it and share your experience and or ideas for using it in the future.
And as you learn about this and you're writing your comments in the chat pod, also keep in mind to think about, the direct instruction angle, how you can use this resource during direct instruction, okay? All right, so Margie says, this is the first time I've heard of this, but oh goodness, we got a lot coming in here. Um, this is the first time I've heard about this, but I do get a computer lab for an hour a day and look forward to seeing how I can use for a multi-level class. And
Awesome.
Margie, think about how you can use this resource in your own classroom to practice reading comprehension before you let them, set them loose in the lab, okay? This is a powerful tool to use during your direct instruction as well as in the lab and for small group work, as several of you said, all right? So you really want to really think about how you're going to expand out using this. And Gareth says,
Mm.
I used it most recently to use repetition with a difficult text. We read the text in class, working to translate the text to easier language and just get the gist. Oh, awesome, Karen! And then used actively learn to give them a second read at their own pace,
Perfect.
interspersed, if I can say that word, with questions that made them think about the content. Very good. I am showing my instructor about the sites as I learn so we can begin using this resource in the classroom. So, kind of to just expand on what Gareth said, a really good way to use this site is you need to be able to introduce it first during direct instruction, and then you can, let them work with the articles. Okay, Ashley. There you go.
Okay, awesome. So what we're going to do, and yeah, that's exactly it. There's a lot of ways to use this, as we've talked about. And I think Gareth had some great examples of exactly how to use it and how it works well, because there's a lot of different ways, and it isn't just about sending them out and just going on their own to read. Because, like we said, because it can be used on the overhead as well. If you don't have technology, it can be used on cell phones. But if you don't have technology and you want to do it together, that can be done. It can be done in groups. It can be done a variety of different ways. So we're going to look at actively learn from the student's perspective. So I'm doing this a little bit differently than I did it before. I'm going to take us straight to a student's account. Last time I just did it from student mode, but this time I want you to see exactly what the students are seeing. Give me just a second here. There we go. Okay, so when I pull this up, so this is me as the student, and we're just going to kind of take a look at what we're seeing when they first log into the account. So on the left, you're going to see the classes this particular student is in. Obviously, these are the ones that her teacher has made for her. So she's got her Tech Intel, 50103B, Course 1, and Professional Development. But you're also going to see that there's an independent reading section as well. But more importantly, on the middle, you see the assignments. And if you notice, it tells the student right away which ones haven't been answered. If it doesn't say anything, that probably means that one is done. But you also notice that there's also a video that can be assigned as well, which is really cool because the video is interactive. So you'll see that as they watch the video, again, we are interrupting what they're doing, so to make sure that they're paying attention and they have an opportunity to answer the questions as they go. And they can't continue the video until they answer the questions, which is very similar to an Ed Puzzle video, if anyone's familiar with that. So I'm actually pretty excited because you'll notice that kind of goes hand in hand with this assignment next to it, which is called What's a Solstice? This is one I just found this morning and assigned it because I thought that might be kind of interesting to look at. And then once I'm in the assignment itself, the first thing that I want you to pay attention to is I, as a student, and this is very important though that we show the students this, can change my settings. So I can change my margins and spacing. I can change my text size. I can change my font if I want to, and you'll notice there is even an open dyslexic font. I can change the colors if I want to, and I can turn paragraph numbering on or off. And I can also use dyslexic settings, which I think Anne-Marie's going to get a little bit more into that later. But you see that I'm able, as a student, I have all these options of how I want to view the reading on my own. I also see there's assignment directions. My teacher might incorporate into this section maybe a pre-reading or a video or a graphic image or an image of infographic. That's what I was trying to say, of some sort. So there's different things. And then as I begin, I can also see that my teacher has added some media to this. So I might not know what Stonehenge is in England. So she's provided me with a picture, and from time to time she may provide me with some notes as well to help me understand what it is. And from there, again, the teacher provides a description of what the equator is and some other images. And then finally, you'll see that I am now being interrupted with a question that I have to answer or I can't continue, because I have to answer the question to make sure that I am getting that comprehension. And while I'm doing this, my teacher is able to assess my learning from her end, or his end, sorry. And there is no, I just saw a question come in that it's hard for me not to answer that, sorry, Anne-Marie. But she asked what the cost is of Actively Learn. This is only the free version that we're looking at. So I'm actually glad that you asked that. You will also notice on the side, it will also will help me with the reading. So there's also the audio version of this. So it'll actually go through word by word. I'm not a huge fan of that for myself, but my students may find that helpful to them, especially if they are a second language student, because, you know, maybe they're having problems pronouncing it or understanding the word. From there, so just say I answered the question. I just wanted to show this. I do not know what the answer. Well, I was wrong. So it shows me that I was wrong. And then I just continue from there. But those are some basic features that the student sees. They may also see notifications if the teacher has commented or provided feedback to them. If they just want to see notes, they can click on just the notes section. And then, of course, there is a search section as well. And I'm going to stop for a moment because I know that some questions came in.
Yes, Ash, can you just quickly go over, is it easy for a student to create an account? Or what's the process with that? Because I know that this is easier than some other sites.
Yes, that's a good point. There's so much that I knew I was going to forget something. So a student can do this one of two ways. If you are a Google person, which most of my organization is, you can simply connect it with Google Classroom, and it immediately imports it, and all they do is go to the link that you provide to them. But if you don't use Google Classroom, that's okay too. You just have them go to Actively Learn, and you share with them a code. So you'll see right here. So all they do is go to Actively Learn. My students log in with Google. If they don't have Google, that's okay. They can just, I think it just asks for their name and their email. And once they're in, this will all be blank in the beginning, and they just click on the plus sign and they enter the class code. And then they're in. If I had a class code to use, I would show you. I didn't think to do that. But that's how they entered all of these classes over here. So for instance, the Tech Intel, this one right here, this was not entered through Google. This one was actually entered as a class code itself. And also, what else they can also see is how they've done on all the assignments that they've done so far.
And then, and no other questions came in. Keep asking questions, everybody, and when we get to a stopping point, we'll answer them. I don't want you to forget your question.
But just based on what you've seen so far, please go ahead and feel free to enter in the chat pod any benefits, or maybe if you've used it already, the benefits you've seen, that using Actively Learn instead of just using the traditional paper, not that I'm saying that paper is always bad, because I know it's not. I'm not a big fan, but just using the traditional methods of reading, how this could benefit students in adult ed. And you can enter your answers again in the chat pod.
Mauro, he says more student engagement. How, Mauro? Can you draw that out a little bit? How? if they're working individually, or how do you see more student engagement? I'd like to know what you think about that. How are you going to engage the students more? And while Maro's thinking, John Stevenson has a very good question. Is it accessible on most devices? So is it compatible, right, John? Any that it doesn't work for? So is it Android and Apple compatible, and tablet and iPad, Ashley,
Yeah, as
and
long as
phone?
you have the internet, you should be able to use it because I have seen it used. I've used it myself on my iPhone, but it should be compatible anything that has the internet and a web browser.
Hmm. A lot of good comments coming in. I know there are many, Gareth says, I know there are many students that have an easier time expressing themselves in text than in out loud.
Mhm.
And Gareth, don't forget
So
that it
true.
also goes the other way, okay? Especially for students with some types of written expression disabilities. Sometimes it's easier for them to express out loud than it is to write down. So that can go both ways. So I just wanted to kind of flip that and have you kind of think about that too. Some students can express themselves easier in writing, others cannot. Others, because of challenges with dyslexia and phonological awareness, they have a much easier time saying what they want to say out loud versus writing it down. So I wanted to kind of jump on that one. Patricia says the reading is supported by the videos and text options. Excellent. Robert, it varies learning options and can fit learning to their learning style. Okay, here comes Maro back. It causes more concentration on a topic by student without having to compensate to compete with other students. Excellent, Maro. Thank you for that.
Great
Oh, look at,
answers.
golly, you guys are having good thoughts here. Shara says adult ed students don't typically come with the skills that, excuse me, would have them question what they are reading. The program teaches that. I see that a lot with my IAT students. Wonderful. Um, yes. And then Kelly says, Amen. Usually our students are much more oral. Yep, I see that. And I bet you, Kelly, you see that a lot as a career navigator, don't you? Because a lot of our students that sometimes that are challenged by a learning disability, it's much easier for them to orally express themselves, use their hands, demonstrate their knowledge with a
Mhm.
project versus academic. Yep. Okay. Very good.
Awesome.
You guys
Great
are.
answers.
Yep. Okay.
All right. Okay. So now we're going to look at it on the other side from the teacher's perspective, which there's a little bit more involved in that. And I'm just going to briefly show you how to create an account, how simple it is. To create an account, you simply go to activelylearn.com. And from there, you can either, and you will notice this says free account. So I'm just going to kind of comment as it's coming in. Oh, I'm already in. It's not letting me create a free account. But you can either create it with a Google account or you just enter your email information. It's not letting me because I'm already in there, but sorry. But you can either enter your email information. It will ask you what your school name is or your organization name is, and it's probably not going to be on there, but you can add it and they will add it for you, which is pretty cool because most websites don't do that. And once you're in, for instance, with mine, you're going to see all sorts of stuff. So this is where we're at right now. This is my home page, basically. And the first thing, though, you see right off the bat in the middle here that it's suggesting things to me. And this changes almost daily, I do believe, because this was different 2 days ago. In fact, I think this was different yesterday. So, which is pretty cool. So you see the high interest articles, which can be a lot of fun. And so that's where I got the what's a solstice. The other thing you see is how many pages is it, which that's important to me because I do not want something that's going to be 30, 40 pages if I'm trying to do this in 1 or 2 lessons. You also see it's giving me the reading levels. This one is 5th to 7th grade. It also tells me how many questions are already on there and how many notes. And if I decide I like it, I can simply put a star next to it and it saves it for me. Or if I want to right away just go ahead and say, hey, I like it, I want to go ahead and assign it to a class right now, I can, I'll just click on that new class, go ahead and click on it, put as many classes as I want, assign it, and it's done. And if you want to, you can go ahead and grab the link and send it to your students via Google Classroom, as well as if you just want to share it some other way that you share with your students. Once you have it and you've saved it and you like it, you go to my workspace, and that's where you find all of your information. So these are just the ones that I have saved throughout. I might not have done them all, but there's some fun ones. And I really like the articles, especially for adults, because like I've said before, this was the one website that I say, okay, we have a choice of this article or this article. What do we want to read first? And my students were so excited about both of them, they wanted to read them both. So when my students want to read, that always makes me happy, because then it's, we're actually going to enjoy our learning. From there, you're also going to notice on the top, these are all our different subjects that they have so far. And I'm saying so far because I expect that this website's going to continue to expand. In fact, I know it is, because they seem to be making changes pretty frequently, and I'm actually going to show a couple of the changes that were made 2 days ago, as a matter of fact. But the first thing you'll notice that you can search. There's a search. They might not have what you want, though, and we'll talk about that in just a second. But you also notice that I can search by reading levels, so maybe I want 9th through 10th. And then you can see that I have my standards, so maybe I want to do informational text. And already speeches. And automatically it pulls up what they have available for me. I can preview it and take a look at it from what it would look like. On my end, I see that we've got a poll. That's the other thing you can do. You can do polls. And if I like it right away, I can assign it. I'm probably going to do a little bit more reviewing of it than that, of course. But this is just what I see, and this is before it's actually mine, okay? We'll get into what it looks like when we actually assign it. But you see that you have all these different options of things that are already made. So, I'm kind of a fan of not reinventing the wheel. So if it's already made for me, and especially if you have, maybe you're all of a sudden going to have to sub or something, this is extremely helpful for something like that. But not only that, it's just extremely helpful for almost any lesson that you do. But if they don't have what you're looking for, you can always go to My Imports. And here, you can import your own. And there's some very important things I'm going to say about this today, because I learned something the hard way. You do that by adding content. So you can do this by importing an internet article. So if you have the link to an internet article, you can do that. You can, if you're a Google person like me, you can import a Google document if you have it saved to your Google Drive. You can, of course, upload a PDF, or you can create a quiz. And then the newest thing that you can do, which I'm pretty excited about, is you can now import your own video. This just came out 2 days ago, so I was kind of excited about that. So if you have something on YouTube that you want to include in your lesson, you can include it, and then you can add your own questions and comments to it as you go. Now, I want to make this comment because I was so disappointed yesterday, because I was going to demo something we did for our career transitions last month. And I had taken an internet, and I think I got it from Denise Guckert when she was here with us a couple months ago. And I had so I imported an internet article, and let me tell you what happened to it. It was awesome because it took 2 seconds to do it. But then when I went back into it to look at it, and the students had done it, so it was nice because it would ask them their skill, and they'd ask a question, and they could enter their skill as they went through it, and it was a really nicely laid out lesson. And when I went back to look at it the other day, I couldn't do anything. So that is a lesson to be learned on my part. And the reason I couldn't do anything was because it was an internet article, and what happens on the internet sometimes? Sometimes the URL changes, and that's what happened. So my recommendation is, if you can avoid using the internet articles, that's probably going to be better. And instead, I would do, and I will show you how to do it, but if you import an article, and you have the URL, you just put the URL in there. So let's say We could probably actually use this. I'm not sure. Maybe not. But let's say we have article. Technology. But say you find an article about, on New York Times, and you want to use that because you would like your students to be more actively involved in the reading. You just paste it, and then it'll process your text. It always asks for the author and the topic, and then we'll say informational. And then in a few moments, hopefully there we go. And of course, this time it's taking longer because we're on a live webinar, but it'll show up in a few minutes. There it is. So that didn't even take a few minutes. It took like seconds, really. And so from there, now I have this article. It imported within moments, and there's not much on this article, but you see what you can do. But back to what I was saying, though, is I probably will not do it that way again because I don't want to take the risk of the URL changing in the future. So instead, I would probably import from Google, which if you do that, you just simply go to your Google Drive and you import from there. Or if you already have a PDF on your desktop, you can, here, I think I did this last time too. If I want to bring in, this one is science. I'm just going to type science. I don't know who the author is. But you can simply upload it that way. The good thing about doing it this way is once you've added your content to it and added the questions to it, it'll save. You don't have to worry about losing that information. But while I'm in this section, I just kind of want to show you. So now that I've imported it, I have all these different options. So I've got authoring options here. So you'll see that if there is a lock next to it, you cannot do that because that is a pro feature, and so you won't be able to do that. But I am able to send a copy of it to my colleagues, and by colleagues, what they mean is when you enter your organization, they're talking about people who are associated with you in that organization. You can also mark it as a quiz if you want to, and if you need to remove things, questions or notes. Here, you can view all the notes. We don't have any yet, of course. And the questions. So here I can add directions if I want to. But more importantly, if I only want my student to read a section at a time, that's where I am able to insert notes or questions. Oops. You can also insert links. But I'm going to get out of this one because this one's kind of strange to look at. And I'm going to show you an example. You will also notice, before I show you another example, is on the left-hand side, these are my classes that I have. And so if I want, and I can even join somebody else's class if I want to, but when I click on classes, I'm able to import my classes from Google Classroom if I want to. But we're going to look at, briefly, one that I already have. We'll look at this one. All right. So this is just an example of one. You'll notice that there are directions. I can add a pre-reading question if I want to. I like doing a poll just to see maybe what they know about a subject, or you can just ask them a question. They can do short answer. You have multiple choice. You can also randomize choices. Whoops. And there's a lot of other options you can add to it as well. You can allow media responses. You could add a DOK level. These are a lot of things I have not done myself, but I don't know, maybe somebody else has. And so then they go through the reading, and then it will stop them and ask a question. But then what I can do is if I want to just stop it and I want to add something to it, when I highlight it, it will allow me to insert a question, insert a note, insert a link if I want to, or I can even white out a section if I don't want that section to be seen by the student. Um, Beyond that, I think, there we go. Okay. But you can also see, again, this is where I might want the students to understand something about the Great Wolf ancestors, which you see over here. And then I'm actually able to insert media to it. And I'm going to stop because I feel like I've done a lot of talking, and I know this is a lot of information, and see if any questions or comments have come in.
Okay, so let me see. I did. I'm glad that you showed everybody how to, you know, download an article into your library and then work with it as far as what you're showing now. So, are there any questions so far about what Ashley's shown you? And again, if if you see a little lock next to the feature, that means that you have to upgrade. But all of the things that Ashley's showing us right now are all the features that are free that you can use. So I want to emphasize that part. But are there any questions so far? And I think you said, Ashley, can we go back to the site real quick?
Yes.
Sorry, you got out
No,
of
no,
there.
no, you're
Okay.
fine.
There's different topics. Margie did ask a question, and I want to see if I make sure I understand this, Margie. She said just reading any language and math. Does that mean, Margie, that you're looking for math assignments or reading assignments about math? I wasn't sure what you meant by that. Wasn't sure
Curious
what you,
too.
yeah, I wasn't sure what you meant by that.
I
Okay.
can answer it even if she didn't mean it. As of right now, math is not incorporated into this website.
Okay. And that's exactly what she was asking. But
Okay.
I wanted you to show English language arts again.
Okay.
Does it, because I think, again, for our Texas adult education content standards, I want to show you, you know, these would all work to address our content standards, especially when you're thinking, and I put in the chat pod, you know, author's point of view, informational, tone, if you're working with poetry. The English language arts, our content standards address whether it's the actual standard or a benchmark to meet the standard. So, you know, just go ahead and, you know, take a look at the standards and see how you can use this, because these would all work, and they give you, you know, it looks like hundreds of different articles here at different grade levels. So I wanted to point that out.
Yes, and like you can see
Exactly.
how many types and genres and themes, and there's so many different options, which is awesome. And it, mostly, to me, actively learn, if you just jump in and explore, you're going to find something, and you're going to find something very quickly. And you'll also notice it's pretty timely. So we're talking about Dickens, we're talking about the holidays. You're looking at some things that are just recently added. I don't look at things that cost money. But also the high interest articles, if you view more, you can see even more options for what you can and cannot, or I'm sorry, more options of what you can use that might be, and you know, pro-con debates. Those are always pretty helpful in our, with our HSE classes, or, you know, our adult ed classes as it is.
Extended response for
Yes,
the essay as
exactly.
well, for the high school equivalency examinations. Because I just want to kind of just go over a couple things
Okay.
with everybody and give you another spin on how to use this resource, and kind of just put the focus on special education for a minute. So at this time, I'm gonna transition over to my special education teacher hat here, and I kind of want to talk about some of the things, some of the student features, and we'll focus on this slide in a minute, but I want to kind of just review a couple things that Ashley talked about early on, which are incredibly helpful for students with learning disabilities, and several of you addressed this in the chat pod. The first thing is that when a student with learning disabilities is tackling reading comprehension, it's an overwhelming task. because they're already challenged with understanding the text. So, what are the strategies that we can teach them to help them interact with the text? And a couple things that you said in the chat pod. Robert said this. Margie, I think, brought this up. Gareth brought this up. Getting them to interact with the text, having them read the text several times, also, small group works, paired group works, and one on one group works. So, thinking about how you can organize your classroom where you have some students that are working in a group, maybe looking at an article together. Maybe your advanced students are working on the articles by themselves. And then, how can you work with a student that is really struggling? But there are some specific tools and actively learn that work really well. If you're going to assign these articles, you want to do something called guided reading mode. And Ashley talked about this where you stop the student from going forward if they are not understanding the article. They have to answer the questions before they move on. Okay? This is extremely powerful for students with learning disabilities because they don't know how to read an entire text. Sometimes again it's overwhelming. So if you can get them breaking it down paragraph by paragraph and asking them questions, that's going to be helpful. Other section I wanted to talk about, and Ashley, maybe you can go to the site real quick and bring up all those different features that you talked about with highlighting. Let's go to the student's perspective for a minute. The student's perspective.
Okay,
And
this is
so,
student.
okay, good. So something that Ashley said is is huge. And they're called accessibility tools. And when she talked about highlighting a particular article, sections of an article, that is helpful for a student with learning disabilities, getting them used to highlighting things they don't understand. Um, the audio, this is called text to speech. And for students that are not only English language learners, text to speech is very powerful for a student who is struggling with a language disability or maybe struggling with dyslexia. Many of our students are reading several grade levels below where they need to be, and even on a TABE test. If they score on a TABE test and their NRS levels show that they're at a certain level, that doesn't mean that they're still not struggling with reading comprehension. So the text to speech relieves them if they're having difficulty with phonological awareness, hearing the sounds, pronouncing the letters, recognizing words, decoding words. And so that's very powerful for students with learning disabilities. Font size, don't forget about font size, expanding the font size for them. And also, the dyslexic feature, it could be that if you change the font the way it looks in the dyslexic view, that it may help them read it better because it has to do with the shape of the letters and the background. I'm by all means not a dyslexic expert, but this helps how the words appear on the page. So don't be afraid to experiment with the dyslexic mode for your students, okay? And then lastly, which I think is another feature for your students, is the whiteout feature, okay? Now, Ashley talked about the whiteout feature, and I'm going to ask you a question real quick. Why would it be helpful for you as a teacher to take a text and maybe take sections out of the text before you assigned it to a student? Why would you want to do that? And you guys can answer in the chat pod. Why would you want to take certain sections out of an article? Oh, that's good, Margie. I didn't think about that. Ask students to predict, yes. What if you have a student that's really in a multi-level class and you want everybody to kind of be working on courage or loyalty or some type of a text, but you know that they're having difficulty and not everybody's at the same level of the text. So what okay. Yes, I'm looking at what Shara said. Maybe too much information for the student to take in at one time. You are basically differentiating for the student. You may have several students working on the whole article at the level that it is, but you may have several students where you need to simplify the text for them. Okay? So that's a way to differentiate by grade level and by skill so that they're all working on the same article, but you've differentiated it so that it may be a little less difficult for them. Okay? Instead of that article, instead of having that section that you whited out, you may want to put you may want to put more questions there, or you may want to work on vocabulary. So I just want you to start thinking about all these different features that are really designed for students with special learning needs, students with learning disabilities. It is a very rare case where someone that has been in resource all through K through 12 and is returning as an adult is going to feel comfortable working with an entire article at first, especially if they're struggling with reading. Okay? So you want to figure out how you can help them be successful with the text. Okay, any questions about
Um,
that? Oh, go ahead.
yeah, Margie has a very, very good
Mm,
question, and I wish I had the answer that I want to
mm,
give, but I don't. She asked if this could be considered distance learning in Texas. It is not approved curriculum. That's very important to know. However, that doesn't mean it couldn't be extra, like
no.
homework.
Hmm.
You know,
Let
you
me
can
address
definitely
that.
assign
Hmm.
it that way.
Yeah, John Stevenson from TWC is on the call, but I will say that this is not an approved distance learning curriculum, Margie. So what you would use this for is basically just supplemental homework, okay? And so I hope that answers the question. And um, I'll let John jump in if he wants to add, but it is not an approved curriculum. But where this is very helpful again is yes in the lab for the students, but how can you use this during direct instruction? And John is unmuted. Go ahead, John.
Well, I just wanted to say, yeah, you're right. It's not approved, at least not now, but we are changing our approval process here. And in the coming year, we'll
Hmm.
implement it where we'll make it easier for publishers to seek approval. So we're taking away a
Wonderful.
vetting process that we had in the past, and
Awesome.
instead we're asking the publisher to show how they meet certain criteria that we're looking for. But that said, it will still take, it will be easier and quicker for a publisher to get approval, but there is some time for us to do a little bit of testing and also
Hmm.
get teams, set up teams so that it can accommodate the curriculum, because you still will need to identify what curriculum you're using when you report proxy hours. So the answer for now is no, but it, it's very possible we could do it sometime within this year.
Hmm. That's wonderful, John, because there's a couple I think then I would like to talk to you about. Maybe, possibly. So so thank you for that. And I see some wonderful questions coming in.
Mhm.
And Rebecca, this is very powerful. I have a very special class. One is an 83-year-old who has recently learned very basic reading skills. His
Mhm.
eyes are dim. I have at least two with this is what we call intellectual disabilities and emotional disabilities. Emotional behavior is how the federal government defines that for the law. So right there, two things are going to be very important for you, and that's going to be using that text to speech feature, especially for your 83-year-old students that's challenged with a vision issue. He can be working working with the articles, interacting solely with text to speech. You may also want to expand it, expand the font for him. And we can talk offline more about that, some things. Emotional disabilities, how you choose to help him. He may be better off using a headset, working on the computer himself with these articles, or maybe you helping the student one-on-one. So I hope that helps a little bit. And Margie, I'm glad that you're okay with using this as a supplement because it is very good. All right, we are running out of time, and we could probably spend another hour. And go ahead and move to the next slide, Ashley. I want to give you some ideas. Okay, I was going to ask this question, but we're going to answer it.
Sorry.
I wanted to ask this question: what specific reading comprehension strategies should adult learners master before transitioning to a college course or a certificate program? And what they really need to master is how to interact with the text and understand the text and start asking questions about the text and using critical thinking questions, because on the job, they're going to have to be able to understand what they're reading, and they're going to have to be able to respond and maybe produce something for a boss, right? So we need to get them really, really interacting with the text. So let's look at the next slide. And here, students transitioning to college and career will encounter text with increasing difficulty and complexity. And next point.
Oops.
So direct instruction and the use of specific reading strategies will improve comprehension across a variety of texts. So Ashley has shared with you how to download these articles and assign these articles to students. But now I'm going to challenge you to think about how you can practice looking at some of these articles in your class before you send them out to work with the text individually. I want you to start thinking about modeling specific strategies. And so next slide. How many of you are familiar with read, write, think? And Ashley's going to put a link in the chat pod now. It's called Read, Write, Think. And oops,
Sorry.
That's all right. Go. Okay. So this is wonderful, Marjorie. You'll love this site. Let me go ahead and I think it would be easier just go back to the PowerPoint. Ashley, I got it.
Okay.
Yeah, because I think that would be easier. I'm sorry. And she got it. Look at her. Okay. So I've given you a link in the chat pod where you can download free graphic organizers where you can use these graphic organizers with the site in your classroom. And the first one I want to look at is Direct Reading Thinking Activity, which is DRTA. And it's just a way for your students to start working with the text. Teachers ask students what they think the article is going to discuss. Students share and record their predictions. Teacher reads a section of the text. Students confirm, revise their predictions. Okay? And so you can find this on Read, Think. I can't. On Read, Write, Think. And it's downloadable and it's free. And the students can actually type on it or they can write on it. Okay? So that's one. So choose the article that you want to use from Actively Learn and work with the article in a classroom using some of these strategies. Next slide. We're almost done and we'll wrap up here. Next strategy is the next slide, Ashley.
Sorry, there you go.
Is another one is the question-answer relationship, QAR. And here's another template called Making Connections that you can download from Read, Write, Think. And it asks the student to think about making connections. How does it relate to themselves? Like in the instance with the article with the dog. I know Ashley and I are animal lovers, and I've lost several animals, and it was like losing a brother. or a sister, and I mourn their loss to this day still. And so, getting students to relate to the text to themselves, and then does it remind them of another text that they've read, and then text to world. How does this help them relate to the rest of the world based on what they're reading? This is a wonderful graphic organizer to use with Actively Learn in small group work. And several of you mentioned that you use small groups. This is very good for your IET classrooms as well, because again, in the business world or in college, students are going to have to really work with the text to understand, so that they can finish their degree or be successful on the job. Okay, we're almost done. Next slide. And then finally, I want to just remind you about this great one, which is the KWLS chart, which is what I know or I think I know, what I want to know, what I've learned, and what I still want to learn. Okay? These are all downloadable on the Read, Write, Think. And if you go directly to that link, it goes to the printouts, and you're going to have all these printouts that you can look at. So I wanted to give you, from the learning disabilities perspective, the number one thing, and I'll wrap up here. The number one thing that you do not want to do for your students that may have a learning challenge is send them loose with these articles all by themselves. Okay? What you need to do is you need to think about how you're going to introduce the article, help them learn strategies. So you introduce it in class, you work with it in class, and then you assign articles to students as homework. Having students in a lab where they're struggling to understand an article all by themselves is not the best way to do this. You want to get them working with the text first during direct instruction. So a best practice really is to work with the text, work with the article in class, and then assign them the article as homework. Okay, so I hope that was a little bit helpful. I am always available via email to put my special education cap on with all of you at any time, and I'm going to pass it back to Ashley, and we'll close out.
Okay.
Thanks, everybody.
All right. Thank you. And I know we didn't get through everything, but I kind of figured we were going to run out of time today. But if anyone has questions, please feel free to email me anytime. I have no problem helping out. That is really all I have for today. But like I said, this is one of those websites that is going to be constantly changing from month to month. So it's kind of a good idea just to kind of keep up and pay attention, because they're going to keep making new changes, and I think they're all going to be great changes. The most recent thing they did is they added a Be a Supreme Court Justice series, which I'm kind of interested in looking at, that has interactive articles that will let your students be the judge on a Supreme Court cases. So I think those could be useful as well. But that is all I have. I know that everybody is probably ready to go, but thank you for joining us today.
Yes, thank you so much. I know that I speak for Ashley and myself that we are always here to help you in every way possible. And I love helping you help your students that are challenged with learning disabilities or possibly another disability. And so I am here if you want to troubleshoot ideas with me or even get on a conference call. I'm available. And we'll stay on a few minutes if there's other questions.